Central Park was bathed in that deceptive golden light you get on autumn afternoons, when the sun feels like it's gently warming the historic statues and pathways, but the wind is already whispering hints of the harsh winter ahead. Right in the middle of that picture-perfect scene, a bustling spot where tourists snapped photos, joggers rushed by, or friends laughed in close groups, there was an island of total loneliness, a weathered wooden bench occupied by Mr. Elias. At his age, Elias had pretty much become part of the park scenery for most people passing by. Just a motionless figure in a faded gray sweater that had seen better days, and a baseball cap pulled low over his brows, hiding eyes full of untold stories that nobody seemed interested in hearing. People hurried past him, averting their gaze as if poverty or old age were something you could catch just by looking, ignoring the fact that beneath those humble clothes beat a heart carrying a secret from 40 years ago. Elias wasn't there by chance, and he wasn't there because he had nowhere else to be. He came to that park every single day with the reliability of a grandfather clock, driven by a broken promise and a hope that stubbornly refused to fade. His hands, large and calloused, rested on his shaky knees. Hands that, once upon a time, could craft wonders out of wood, but now only clutched at the emptiness of time. He stared at the cracked pavement, counting the lines so he wouldn't have to meet the eyes of those ignoring him, feeling the buzz of the city envelop him without ever truly connecting. Loneliness at that age isn't just quiet. It's a relentless echo of memories replaying, questioning what went wrong, what could have been different, and why life left you behind while everyone else moved forward. He was an invisible man in a world fixated on the surface. As the wind swirled dry leaves around his scuffed boots, Elias pondered how cruel time can be. It steals your vitality, but sharpens your memories just to remind you of what's gone. Here, at Tales of Kindness, we love to linger on these overlooked details, because every person you see sitting alone in a park carries an entire world behind their eyes. Have you ever paused to consider the story of someone like that in your own town? I'd love for you to take a moment and share in the comments where you're tuning in from today, and if you've ever felt that kind of invisibility we're describing. Your participation brings these tales to life. They evolve from mere words into a shared community that connects and empathizes. Suddenly, the dull gray of the afternoon shattered with a laugh, bright and innocent. A sound so pure it pulled Elias's gaze upward for the first time in hours. A short distance away, a young woman with light brown hair and a graceful presence, even in casual jeans and a hoodie, strolled slowly. It was Catherine. At 32 years old, her face held that unique blend of weariness and resolve you see in single moms who shoulder the world's burdens without complaint. She wore no fancy accessories or brand-name bags, but her stance radiated a quiet dignity that demanded respect. But it wasn't her who captured the old man's attention. It was the young boy at her side. A kid around 10 with tousled hair and wide eyes that soaked in the world with endless curiosity. The boy, whom his mom called Alex, ignored the park's fountains or the squirrels darting about. All his focus was on an item he cradled in his hands with near-sacred care, as if it were a priceless artifact rather than a simple toy. It was a wooden boat, but not some cheap plastic knockoff from a big box store. It was a handcrafted gem made of rich, polished walnut with faded canvas sails that had aged over decades, and a hull striped in navy and crimson. Elias felt a jolt race down his spine, a shiver unrelated to the chill. His eyes, once dim and unfocused, sharpened intensely on that object. His heart pounded fiercely, hammering against his chest like a trapped animal. It couldn't be. It was impossible. It had been over 40 years since he'd seen those elegant curves, that unique prow design, that signature wood carving style known only to one craftsman. He leaned forward on the bench, wincing at the ache in his back, trying to tell himself it was a trick of the mind. That isolation had finally broken him. But as the boy drew nearer, the truth became undeniable. That boat wasn't a modern replica from an online shop. That boat was a specter from his past, returning to confront unfinished business. Catherine, ever vigilant and protective, noticed the old man staring at her son, and her maternal instincts flared instantly. Times were tough, and a single mom with her child had to be wary of strangers, especially those who appeared unkempt or unsteady. She placed a hand, soft yet firm, on Alex's shoulder, subtly steering him to the other side of the path, away from the bench and the man gawking with his mouth agape. "Come on, Alex, we're running late," she whispered, quickening her pace. But fate, with its hidden and capricious threads, had different intentions for that afternoon. Alex, intrigued by something in the old man's expression, or perhaps guided by a child's pure instinct, halted abruptly, resisting his mother's nudge. "Wait, Mom," the boy said clearly, planting his sneakers on the pavement. Alex looked at the old man, not with fear or the adult's typical indifference, but with real curiosity. He'd seen how the man's eyes fixed on his boat, and for a kid who cherished that toy above all else, spotting someone who shared his fascination was an unbreakable pull. Elias, seeing the boy pause, mustered every effort to appear less imposing, softening his features and lifting a shaky hand in a timid wave. He yearned to shout, to rush toward them, but knew any abrupt action would frighten the mother and shatter this delicate moment. The boy released Catherine's hand and took 2 steps toward the bench, bridging the divide between 2 worlds. Catherine exhaled tensely, but she didn't intervene this time. There was something in the old man's raw vulnerability, in the profound sorrow etched on his face, that briefly lowered her guard. Alex lifted the wooden boat, displaying it proudly like a prize. "Do you like boats, sir?" he asked innocently, his voice piercing the wall of silence that had encased Elias for years. That simple query, posed with the non-judgmental purity of youth, felt like a key unlocking a rusted door. Elias felt emotion rising in his throat, making speech impossible at first. The old man swallowed hard, struggling to maintain composure before these strangers who, unknowingly, held the missing fragment of his life. With a voice rough, cracked from disuse and suppressed feelings, Elias finally managed to reply. That isn't just any boat, kid," he whispered, as his arthritic index finger pointed unsteadily at the painted wooden hull. "That's the Guardian of the Lakes. Can I take a closer look, please?" The plea lingered in the air, laden with desperate longing. Catherine tensed again, weighing the situation, caught between empathy and caution. The boy glanced at his mom for permission, unaware that handing over the toy would unleash a truth forever altering their lives. There was a heavy silence, one of those pauses that seems to quiet the traffic and still the breeze. As Catherine studied Mr. Elias's deeply lined face and his weary blue eyes, she found not the threat she'd initially feared, but a well of nostalgia so profound it tugged at her heart. As a single mother who'd fought bias and isolation alone, she had a keen sense for spotting authentic suffering in others. Slowly, defying all the societal cautions about strangers, she nodded faintly to her son. Alex, with a grin that brightened the overcast afternoon, stepped forward and placed the wooden boat into the old man's quivering hands. The instant Elias's rough fingers touched the varnished wood, it felt almost holy, like a survivor grasping solid ground after years adrift. As he felt the familiar weight, a weight etched in his memory, an astonishing change overtook Mr. Elias's demeanor. His slumped back, bowed from nights on benches and in shelters, straightened a bit, and his hands steadied, now stroking the hull with the finesse of a seasoned artisan. His fingertips followed the wood's grain, not as an inspector, but as one reading a cherished letter in Braille. He knew every curve, every sanded flaw, every knot concealed under the polish. Walnut for the hull, pine for the mast. He murmured to himself, his voice trembling with feeling, as his thoughts journeyed back 40 years to a cozy garage workshop filled with sawdust and aspirations, where the aroma of glue and fresh timber was the scent of joy. That boat wasn't merely a toy, it was a fragment of his soul he'd believed lost forever in the storm that ravaged his life. Alex observed the old man with eyes as wide as saucers, captivated by how this man, who moments ago seemed like a forgotten wanderer, now spoke with the command of a skipper. "Look here, young one," Elias said, gently rotating the vessel and indicating a small, nearly invisible mark near the rudder, a detail no one else would notice. "There's a little groove right here, see it? It looks like a blemish, a dent, but if you trace your finger over it..." The old man pressed lightly, and a tiny wood sliver moved, uncovering 2 minuscule initials carved with exact precision, E and M. Catherine leaned closer, incredulous, and suppressed a gasp upon seeing the letters. There was no way this man could know of that concealed feature unless he'd crafted it himself. The mystery deepened, and the air thickened with unspoken queries. "E for Elias," the old man whispered, his voice faltering as he attempted the second initial, as if the M were sharp edges cutting his words. He gazed up at Catherine, and for the first time, she saw beyond the hardship, the artist, the father, the person who'd existed before adversity erased him. "Where? Where did you get this, ma'am?" he asked with an urgency verging on desperation. He needed to trace the object's path, how it endured time and neglect to reach a child's hands in this very park. It was as if the cosmos had schemed, shifting unseen elements across decades to arrange this improbable encounter on an ordinary fall day. Stories like Mr. Elias's remind us that the items around us, those we pick up at yard sales or thrift shops, can harbor emotional weight we never suspect. Sometimes we're merely temporary keepers of others' treasures, awaiting the perfect time to return them to their true owners. On this channel, Tales of Kindness, we believe firmly that coincidences don't exist, only linked destinies. If you too think there's a greater force connecting people through items and recollections, I invite you to type the word HOPE in the comments right now. By doing so, you help spread this message of faith and human bonds. I want to hear your experiences. Have you ever discovered something that felt alive with its own history? Your comment with hope means a lot to us today. Catherine pulled her jacket tighter, suddenly chilled not by the air, but by the moment's intensity. "I picked it up 2 weeks ago at a flea market in the old district," she explained quietly. It was in a dusty cardboard box buried under stacks of vintage comics. The vendor said he was tossing it out since no one wanted it, calling it outdated junk. At those words, Elias closed his eyes in anguish. His masterpiece, the emblem of his paternal love, nearly discarded like trash. Alex chimed in swiftly, defending his prize. "But I spotted it, Mom. I knew it was special. It was shining, even under the grime. I begged Mom to get it with my allowance." The boy's purity soothed the old man's raw hurt. "It cost just a few bucks," Catherine added, feeling oddly remorseful for paying so little for something of immense worth to this man. "Alex hasn't parted with it since. He even keeps it on his bedside table. He says the boat whispers adventures in his dreams." Elias smiled through his tears. A gap-toothed smile, yet endlessly warm. "That's because it was crafted with so much love, kid. And love, it seeps into the wood, embeds in the grains, and stays forever, no matter the years." The old man traced the mainsail, sewn from fabric once part of a flannel shirt. This boat had a purpose. It wasn't meant for water, but to voyage through time, carrying a message. The crowds around them continued their hustle, unaware of the heartfelt wonder unfolding on bench number 7 in the park. A businessman on his phone nearly bumped Alex, risking the boat, but Elias shielded it instinctively with his body. That protective move didn't escape Catherine. She no longer saw a drifter, but a guardian grandfather, someone who'd fiercely safeguarded his own in another era. "Did you make it?" she asked straightforwardly, though she sensed the answer. "Yes," Elias nodded, his stare drifting to the city skyline. "I built it 43 years ago for my son, for his 10th birthday. The same age your boy here looks to be." The disclosure dropped like a veil of quiet among the three. "Your son's name was Matthew," Alex guessed, recalling the M initial Elias had revealed. Elias nodded slowly, a lone tear tracing his grimy cheek, carving a clean path on his rugged skin. "Yes, Matthew, my little Matthew." He adored the lakes, even though he'd never visited one. He dreamed of being a skipper. The mood grew solemn. Catherine felt compelled to inquire what befell Matthew, why Elias was alone and homeless if he had a son. But the old man's fragility signaled that topic required delicate handling. The aura of loss radiated from Elias like a stifling wave. There are sorrows that shatter people beyond repair, and Elias was a patchwork of fragments, barely cohesive through reminiscence. But then Elias did something that stunned Catherine and Alex. With hands reclaiming youthful steadiness, he inverted the boat. "Is there more?" he whispered conspiratorially, glancing around to ensure privacy. Something even the seller didn't know. "Matthew and we shared a secret." Elias glided his thumb over a particular plank on the hull, identical to others, and pressed a hidden spot, unseen to novices. A faint click sounded, and a small hull section slid aside, exposing a concealed chamber. Alex gasped in wonder. The space was dim, but within, folded precisely and yellowed by 40 years' shadow, lay a note. Time froze as Elias, with gentleness belying his calloused hands, withdrew the paper. It was notebook paper, quartered, edges frayed, tinted like aged parchment. The park's hush felt overwhelming to them. forging an intimate cocoon amid the urban rush. Alex inched so near he nearly toppled, breath held, while Catherine sensed a twist in her gut, knowing she beheld something hallowed. The old man unfolded it cautiously, fearing disintegration like a preserved bloom. As it fully opened, another item tumbled out, a small black-and-white photo with scalloped borders from the 70s. It landed face up on the cool pavement. Catherine knelt swiftly to snatch it before the breeze claimed it. Viewing it, her pulse quickened. The image depicted a sturdy young man, beaming, with a thick mustache and joyful eyes. He hoisted a giggling boy on his shoulders. The man exuded strength, assurance, and boundless paternal love. Lifting her gaze to match that image with the stooped, broken elder before her, time's harshness felt crushing. It was Elias. The same man, but stripped of his radiance. Like a grand edifice reduced to ruins by an unseen quake. Elias accepted the photo with shaky hands and clutched it to his heart, eyes squeezed shut, stemming the flood of tears before strangers. "I wrote this note the day I completed the boat," Elias admitted, voice laced with memories. "Matthew had a fever that week, and I had a foreboding. Just a dad's intuition. I sensed the world shifting too rapidly." Elias read aloud. His words, in faded blue ink, echoed with poignant grace. "To my skipper Matthew, life is like the Great Lakes, sometimes serene, sometimes turbulent. This boat reminds you that even if you stray, you'll always find a safe harbor in your Father's embrace. No matter how far you venture, my love will guide you like a compass. Dad." Alex, who'd never known his own father, felt those lines mend a void in his chest. He regarded Elias not as a vagrant, but as a heroic figure from a tale. "But I never delivered it," the old man went on, folding the note. Life struck hard. Soon after, my wife fell ill. Treatments drained us. I sold my tools, the garage workshop, everything but this boat. I stored it, awaiting a joyful birthday that never arrived, as grief settled in and stayed. Elias eyed the boat in the boy's grasp. When eviction came, I lost so much. I assumed the boat ended in a dump, crushed, forgotten. To imagine it endured 40 years, handed along, bearing my vow unseen. It's a miracle. His eyes met Catherine's, brimming with thanks. Thank you for saving it, for not letting my promise perish in waste. It's in such moments, when history and now merge in beauty and ache, that we see our interconnected threads. Here on Tales of Kindness, we're passionate about uncovering how ordinary objects harbor profound emotions. I'd like to pause this touching tale to ask something key. Where are you joining us from right now? The States, Canada, or a far-flung spot? Drop a comment with your city and country. I adore seeing how these human stories travel. And share. What do you make of Catherine's response so far? Your views build our empathetic circle. Don't forget to subscribe if these narratives resonate. Alex, with children's noble spontaneity, extended the boat to Elias once more, resolute. "Take it, sir." "Elias, it's yours, it's Matthew's. I can't keep it knowing its meaning." The act was so genuine that Catherine swelled with pride for her son, but Elias shook his head softly, declining with boundless gentleness. "No, kid, not anymore. Matthew, he's no longer that boy, and I'm no longer that skipper." The old man laid his hand over Alex's, securing the boy's fingers around the hull. "The boat chose you. Boats pick their captains, not vice versa. You saw its worth when others didn't. You rescued it. Now, guard it with the love I infused. I only ask that you cherish it as I did." Catherine observed, her thoughts swirling. Something in Elias's account felt off, or rather, oddly familiar. As he spoke of his ailing wife and lost workshop, Catherine recalled a family legend her aunt shared about a talented woodworker in the neighborhood who vanished after tragedy. "Your last name is," she ventured, unsure if to delve deeper. "Are you Elias Johnson?" The old man stiffened. That name hadn't been uttered with respect in ages. To society, he was the park bum, a nobody. Hearing his full name was a jolt, reviving him. "Johnson," Elias echoed, tasting the sounds like fine cuisine. "Yes, I was Elias Johnson long ago." Catherine covered her mouth. "My aunt mentioned your creations. She said you built cradles like dreams and desks enduring generations. She always pondered what happened to you and your son." The reference to his son cast a gloom over Elias's expression. "Matthew left," he stated curtly, pain closing that door. When I couldn't provide the promised future, as hardship devoured us, he sought life elsewhere. He was justified. He couldn't witness his dad become this. He gestured at himself, his tatters with gut-wrenching disdain. The sun dipped low, evening's bite sharpening. Catherine knew she couldn't bid farewell and head to her cozy apartment, abandoning Elias Johnson, the fabled craftsman turned specter, to shiver on a bench. She glanced at Alex and saw her son's silent appeal. "Mr. Elias," she declared firmly, leaving no room for debate. "We're not leaving you here. It's getting cold and you need a warm meal. There's a diner nearby, the Corner Cafe. Please join us, my treat." Elias attempted protest, pride clashing with necessity, but the imagined scent of coffee and invitation's warmth prevailed. "Nah, I don't want to impose, ma'am. I reek. Folks will gawk." "Let them gawk," Catherine countered, offering her hand. Not pityingly, but respectfully. "You're the maker of the lake's guardian, my son's beloved toy. To us, you're a star." That phrase, delivered with a sincere smile, fully dismantled the old man. With effort, bracing on the bench, Elias rose. His joints protested, but for the first time in years he walked not as a shadow, but companioned, flanked by a mom and boy clasping a wooden boat. As they traversed the park toward the diner, Catherine subtly drew her phone. She had a wild intuition. While Elias chatted with Alex about fishing knots, she texted an old friend in City Hall records. The note, "Need to find a Matthew Johnson. Urgent. Life-changing." Entering the cozy diner, the shift was stark. The park's nippy gusts yielded to warm air scented with fresh brew and apple pie. Yet, the unusual group's arrival drew eyes. The server, a young woman in a neat apron with a skeptical air, eyed Mr. Elias. Her glance swept his shabby attire and muddy boots disapprovingly, poised to cite policy when she met Catherine's firm stare. No words needed. Her protective, bold stance signaled that ejecting the old man would spark a memorable fuss. The server relented, nodded curtly, and seated them at a quiet booth in the rear, near a heater. Mr. Elias eased into the vinyl seat gingerly, as if afraid to soil or damage it. When Catherine ordered a tall hot cocoa, a turkey melt, and a wedge of cherry pie for him, his eyes misted anew. It had been ages, perhaps a decade, since anyone inquired his preference. He'd subsisted on whatever scraps aid provided. Sipping the steaming cocoa, he shut his eyes, a profound sigh escaping. A blend of solace and sorrow for losses. His hands, quaking from chill and emotion moments prior, now clasped the mug, absorbing warmth to his core. Alex, opposite him, ignored his fries. He sat entranced, eyeing the creator of his prized toy. "How did you ensure the sales lasted?" asked the boy, piercing the booth's respectful quiet. Elias placed his mug down, eyes twinkling afresh, and grabbed a napkin. "The trick, Alex, isn't the cloth, but pre-treating it," he explained, folding the napkin with surprising skill, morphing paper into grace swiftly. "I soaked it in herbal tea and thinned glue. That toughens it and adds that aged, voyage-worn vibe. A fine vessel isn't just timber and tacks, it's patience and lessons from the waters." Catherine watched, utterly engrossed. Before her, the vagrant faded, revealing the expert artisan, the insightful, skilled man life had obscured under adversity. His intellect remained keen. He merely needed listeners who appreciated him. Then, Catherine's phone buzzed on the table, a vibration like an alert in their intimate haven. She checked discreetly. Heart started racing. It was her friend's response from records. She swiped and read. Her eyes widened, stifling a cry. The details were exact, thorough, and stunning. Matthew Johnson lived, he was local, and no stranger. The text linked a recent local news piece. Catherine looked at Elias, still teaching Alex about bow and stern, oblivious that his history had been pinpointed digitally nearby. The revelation in her grasp was explosive. Life sometimes places us at forks where one choice alters fates. Catherine stood at that juncture. She could remain silent, let Elias eat and return to his bench, or hazard reopening a scar for lasting mending. On Tales of Kindness, we know potent tales involve daring steps others avoid. Before Catherine decides, I'd ask you, viewing from afar, what would you choose? Reveal the truth, risking Kirsain, or shield with quiet? Pause and comment your thoughts. I am eager to read them, and if this twist-filled story captivates, subscribe to catch the conclusion. Catherine inhaled deeply, pocketed her phone, and resolved that truth, however tough, was redemption's sole route. "Mr. Elias," she interjected softly, halting the lesson. The old man regarded her with a fading smile upon seeing her gravity. Why never search for Matthew when times improved? Or sooner? The query was blunt, nearly harsh, but essential. Elias dropped his eyes to his cleared plate. "Shame, dear. Shame weighs like concrete," he admitted hoarsely. "At bottom, you believe you're poison to loved ones. I convinced myself Matthew fared better without a failed dad unable to shelter him. I thought vanishing was kindness, and years passed. Rejection's fear outgrew reunion's yearning. Alex, with kid's unwitting insight, touched the old man's hand. But my boat was grimy and lost, and I loved it still. He affirmed, didn't mind the dust or age. I polished it 'cause I knew its value. Matthew surely feels likewise." The boy's words struck Elias like a hammer, crumbling decades' self-barriers. A 10-year-old's logic of boundless love undid 40 years' guilt. Fatherhood's worth wasn't success or wealth, but presence. Elias had self-punished with absence, mistaking it for love. Catherine grasped that vulnerable instant to deploy her ace. She rotated her phone, sliding it across to Elias. The screen glowed with a sharp image of a man in his 50s, salt and pepper hair, in a crisp suit with a hard hat underarm. He shared Elias's eyes, sturdy nose, build. "His name's Matthew Johnson," Catherine murmured. "He's lead designer for the new community arts hub rising across the park by the lakefront. He's earned national accolades. He's prominent, Elias." The old man gaped at the photo like a vision. He touched the display tentatively, stroking his son's digital visage. "It's him," he breathed. "Lord, it's him. He appears so resilient. He's here, Elias." "Under half a mile from our spot all afternoon," Catherine pressed, sensing urgency. "The story notes today's the main framework reveal, and he'll oversee till evening." Fate's irony crushed. The destitute father on a bench, gazing blankly, while his architect son erected the future steps away, divided by greenery. "And lay. Time is of misconceptions." Elias glanced up, panicked. "Can't go like this," he said, eyeing his grime. "I'm a mess. He's refined, a designer, and I'm this. He'll spurn me." Gaze with revulsion like the server. Terror threatened ruin. Catherine rose sharply, wallet out for the check. She wouldn't let dread triumph. "He won't notice clothes. Elias, he'll see Dad, and if not, he's unworthy, but you must attempt. Alex has the boat, you have the note. We have to bridge this." She fetched Elias's coat, proffering it. "Let's go, before he departs." Alex sprang up, cradling the boat like armor. "I'll join you, Mr. Elias. If he's unkind, I'll say you're the top woodworker ever." Propelled by the mother and boy's resolve, faith alone, Elias stood. His legs shook, not from age but sheer dread and hope. They exited into the descending night, heading to the site's glow, toward an encounter that could transform or shatter his remnants. The site loomed like a beacon of steel and light amid the gloom. Floodlights cut the fog, illuminating a grand structure's frame. Machinery's roar and crew calls formed a daunting barrier. Elias halted meters from the barrier, dwarfed by his son's creation. "What if he refuses me?" he muttered, tugging his coat as if to vanish within. "See me. Really see me. I'm a past phantom tainting his bright future." Catherine gripped his arm. "You're no taint, Elias. You're his foundation. A tree without roots falls, regardless of height." They neared the guard post, where a burly sentinel barred them routinely. "Staff only. Private zone," he grunted, barely glancing. Noting Elias's look, his tone hardened. "No handouts, old-timer. Keep moving." Elias retreated, defeated from the start, set to reclaim his bench and solitude. But Alex, armed with youthful courage, ducked the guard's reach and dashed to the fence. "Mr. Matthew," he yelled full force, his voice lost in a crane's din. The guard whirled angrily to seize the child, but Catherine interposed like a protector. "We need to deliver something crucial," she implored, scanning engineers poring over plans afar for the man in the photo. Alex, his shouts futile, improvised. He pressed against the wire, hoisting the boat high through the gaps. The lake's guardian dangled, spotlighted, gleaming like a signal. In that moment, as if the cosmos intervened, Matthew Johnson looked up from the schematics. Something snared his sight. A familiar wooden outline sketched endlessly in his mind. The designer removed his specs, narrowing his eyes. The surroundings muted. Impossible. He advanced mesmerized to the barrier, ignoring alerts, pulled to the improbable item held by an unknown kid in the chill night. As Matthew neared, his heart thundered. Reaching the fence, he bypassed the boy and the woman, his eye tent riveted on the elder in the shadows. He stepped back, realization gradual, shattering. Despite the lines, unkempt beard, and rags, he knew the stance, the hand's form, the melancholic gaze. "Dad," Matthew whispered, his voice reverting to a boy's. Elias advanced, quaking, tears streaming down his soiled face. "Matthew," he replied, his voice Roger says. "Forgive me, I only wished to check you're well. I meant no intrusion." The guard, baffled, lowered his guard, sensing something beyond his scope. This is the pivotal instant, the climax where ego crumbles, leaving raw truth between souls. At Tales of Kindness, we thrive on these redemption moments. Before unveiling this 40-year delayed reunion's end, one final request. If this stirred you, evoked a throat lump or tear, subscribe now and turn on the bell. We aim to touch more souls. Comment, believe in fresh starts? Would you pardon 40 years away if shame-driven, not loveless? Your view bolsters us. Type forgiveness if you think family scars can heal any time. Matthew signaled briskly, gate opened. The designer didn't delay. He exited, facing his father. Elias attempted bowing his head, shamed by odor and need, but Matthew clasped his shoulders solidly. "I searched," Matthew said, voice breaking. "Years. Old garage, block. No trace. Thought you were gone." Elias shook his head, weeping. "Died somewhat when I let you down. Nothing to give, son, just disgrace." Then Alex neared shyly, offering an aged note and photo. "This hid in the boat, sir. He penned for you ages back. Says his love is your guide." Matthew took the faded paper with hands shakier than his father's. Reading 40-year-old paternal words, the tough designer's mask shattered. Matthew said, "No matter how far you venture, my love will guide you like a compass." He knelt on the gritty entry, embracing his father's legs as in youth, sobbing openly before staff. Elias bent, enfolding him, stroking gray locks. "I'm here, son. I'm here," the old man reiterated, suits and